A country with $3 trillion, buried under the sand, yet a third of its people live in tents. 90% of its exports are minerals, but its citizens freeze in the streets, demanding answers. October 6, 2009. Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. In a vast hall of the government palace, the president and dozens of diplomats watch in silence. On a heavy wooden table, representatives of Canadian miner Ivanhoe Mines and the British-Australian giant Rio Tinto sign a 30-year deal. It is the official birth of Oyu Tolgoi, the largest undeveloped copper and gold mine in the world. Welcome to Plexo. That day, the promise was dazzling. Mongolia, a nation of nomadic herders trapped between Russia and China, had just found its lottery ticket. The government projected that this single mine would boost the country's GDP by 30%. But what was signed on that table was not a pact of shared prosperity, it was the start of one of the most sophisticated financial traps in modern mining. The transition from communism to wild capitalism in the 1990s had left Mongolia desperate for foreign capital. Western corporations knew the Gobi Desert hid an incalculable treasure, destined to become a giant mining crater that would devour virgin grasslands. They just needed the right legal framework to extract it. With the signing of that document, the Mongolian state believed it had secured a third of the greatest wealth in its history. What it had actually done was mortgage its future. The most unequal contract was drafted by those who needed it most. The architect of this gold rush was Robert Friedland, the mining magnate and founder of Ivanhoe Mines. For years, Friedland toured investment forums, selling Mongolia as the last great frontier. His pitch was hypnotic because the data backed it up. Beneath the arid southern lands lay veins of copper and gold worth hundreds of billions of dollars. To convince markets, the corporate narrative painted a developing country on the verge of becoming the next Asian powerhouse. But the mirage of wealth crashed brutally against the ground reality. While executives toasted in glass skyscrapers, the nomadic herders who lived in the region watched their world disappear. Mining operations required industrial amounts of water, causing traditional wells to run dry. The visual impact was devastating. Rivers completely dried up, with livestock skeletons scattered along dusty riverbeds became the new landscape of the Gobi. With no means to survive, thousands of families abandoned the steppes and migrated to the capital, Ulaanbaatar. But they found no skyscrapers or well-paid jobs. They ended up crammed into yurt districts, huge informal settlements with no running water or sewage on the city's outskirts. To survive brutal winters of 30 degrees below zero, the displaced began burning raw coal and even tires inside their tents. Mongolia, the country that was supposed to bathe its citizens in gold, was slowly suffocating them under a cloud of toxic smoke. The promised bonanza reached accounts in Amsterdam. The smoke reached the lungs of the Gobi. While citizens breathed smoke, corporate offices executed a masterpiece of accounting engineering. The 2009 deal said the Mongolian state would own 34% of the Oyu Tolgoi mine. It looked fair. But a detail was buried in the fine print. Mongolia didn't have the capital to fund its share of construction. Rio Tinto's solution: lend that money to the Mongolian government at an abusive interest rate, LIBOR plus 6.5%. The trap was perfect. The contract stated Mongolia would receive not a single dollar in dividends until it paid off that entire loan. Then construction costs started multiplying suspiciously. The initial budget of $4.6 billion ballooned to over $10 billion. With every cost overrun, Mongolia's debt grew, pushing the day the country would see real profit further into the future. Wealth flowed, but not to Ulaanbaatar. Through a complex web of subsidiaries, profits were channeled to tax havens in the Netherlands and Luxembourg, slashing taxes paid to the Mongolian state. The image was bleak: a giant steel drill boring rock 2 kilometers deep, extracting thousands of tons of copper that crossed the border, while Mongolia's national accounts stayed in the red. They had handed over their greatest national treasure, only to end up paying for the privilege of being looted. The 34% of the contract was real. But 34% of the revenue was an accounting fiction. If copper was being legally drained by foreign corporations, coal was being ruthlessly stolen by local elites. In late 2022, the Mongolian people's patience snapped. The country faced inflation, over 15%, and poverty hit a third of the population. Then the biggest corruption scandal in modern history erupted. Auditors discovered that 385,000 tons of coal had vanished from the records of state-owned company Erdenshaven Tolgoi. A network of senior officials, lawmakers, and executives, dubbed the coal faction, had been exporting the mineral to China off the books. The theft was estimated at nearly $13 billion, equal to the country's entire GDP for a year. Public fury was uncontrollable. On December 4, 2022, thousands of university students and ruined herders took over the capital's center. The scene was like a period film, protesters wrapped in thick coats, hurling stones and ice blocks at the armored glass of the government palace, enduring temperatures of 21 degrees below zero. They demanded the thieves' names and the immediate resignation of parliament. Riot police formed human barricades to stop the furious crowd from storming presidential offices. The social contract was shattered. Citizens finally understood, the resource curse didn't just come from outside, it was rooted in the heart of their own government. Mongolia didn't have a wealth problem. It had two wealth problems. And both wore ties. Mongolia's drama isn't just about internal corruption or abuse of contracts. The real problem is a geographic accident that can't be changed. The country is a vast, landlocked territory, completely trapped between two ruthless superpowers. This position has turned its economy into a hostage of geopolitics. Over 80% of its exports, almost entirely minerals, have one mandatory destination. China isn't just its biggest customer, it's the absolute owner of prices and trade routes. If Beijing decides to close a border crossing, for political or health reasons, Mongolia's economy grinds to a halt within hours. The dependence is so extreme that the image of this submission is visible from space. Miles-long lines of heavy trucks loaded with coal wait for days to cross the Chinese border under a gray sky, forming a funnel of dust and desperation. Meanwhile, on the northern border, Mongolia relies almost entirely on Russia for energy and refined fuel supplies. It's an immensely rich nation locked in a vault whose keys belong to its neighbors. The government desperately tries to diversify its economy and attract new international trade partners. But investors hesitate due to the lack of independent infrastructure and constant political instability. The Gobi Desert still hides trillions of dollars beneath its surface, untouched and out of reach. Mongolia has proven that a country can own the planet's most coveted treasure and still pay for the right to watch it get taken away.